I've got those, oh, what an easy job you've got. All you do is wave a stick blue. I've got those, what would you do if you had to work instead of singing a couple of songs blue? Isn't it funny? It always looks sunny on the other side of the street. Everything you do is tough, while the other guy's job is sweet. I've got those, get hot, kid, and smile if it hurts. Oh, you don't drink, you must be nurse blue. I've got those, you never sing my favorite number. Don't you ever play a rumba blue. You'll understand if my hair turns to gray, or they have to take me away. I've got those, oh, what an easy job you've got. All you do is wave a stick blue.
Another commentary on the swing era by Ozzie Nelson, complaining there about his own craft of band leading, or at least the public's view of how it was done. In the big band era, the leaders were the stars, and perhaps some of them were misunderstood. But in any case, what really mattered to the day-to-day running of the band was what the musicians thought of the man in charge.
Benny Goodman was God. And for no reason, he would click, turn me off.
Benny would get rid of you by making life so untenable that you'd quit the band so you wouldn't have to get your 2 weeks' pay. That was the difference.
Charlie Barnett's orchestra was a very good orchestra. Good sax player, too. He liked fire engines. And we're playing in Palm Springs, and they were giving us a prize. A big fire engine was in the lobby. And you had he spent about $1,000 on tickets because he wanted that fire engine. And he won. But he didn't get that fire engine. He gave him a little toy fire engine.
During the 30s, there were some people, I mean, the guys I know who were on bands led by Sonny Dunham, for example, told me at one time or another that he was a cross-dresser and carried a suitcase full of women's clothing. And after the gig and when everything had settled down, he went out dressed for business, you know. Well, okay, I mean, there was bound to be some of that.
Bobby Rosengarten, Jerry Jerome and Butch Stone, three swing-era veterans, and the trumpet-playing historian Dick Sudhalter, with a surprising view of one of the second-string band leaders of the 30s, Sonny Dunham. Many of the leaders were musicians themselves and simply rose to prominence through either their prowess on their instrument or their organizing talents. But some quite prominent leaders came to the job without an inkling of how to do it. Bob Crosby, the brother of Bing, was a personable fellow who could sing a little himself, but he'd been picking cucumbers for a living when it was proposed to him out of the blue that he should front a band.
I showed up at Roseland Ballroom, and there was a band. And before the first set, I'll never forget, I looked up at Ray Baduke, the drummer, who, of course, was on the top tier. And I yelled at him, "How do you lead a band?" And he yelled back, "You give 2 beats, and I'll change the tempo correctly." Which I did, and he did. And then, of course, I had a little knowledge of what to do. And it seemed to work pretty well. And we seemed to have a certain rapport between the boys in the band and myself.
That's what my heart keeps saying. This is no dream, this is real. And stars dance above, heavenly music's playing. This must be love, the way I feel. Here you are, in all your loveliness. This moment is divine, darling. Your eyes just beam, telling me love's old story. This is no dream, you're really mine.
Bob Crosby at a more confident stage in his career, but none of the leaders was destined to appeal to everybody.
Bob Crosby was basically a nice guy, but he was insecure, and he was a big baby.
So says Van Alexander, arranger, composer, and for a time a band leader himself. It was one of the penalties of being the top man that your personality was pretty closely observed and criticized by your rank and file. Horace Height's band even recorded a tune, a variation on an existing title called 7 Beers with the Wrong Woman, which they called 7 Years with the Wrong Leader. But some survived this test quite well. Glenn Miller, in his early days, seemed to saxophonist Jerry Jerome a bearable leader.
He was a nice guy. He was quite a disciplinarian, and he was shy. And he didn't have the typical musician ego that comes with a guy that plays like a Goodman, that plays like a Tommy Dorsey or a Harry James. Because if you recall, if you ever see them in concert, Glenn never was up at the mic playing a horn. He was always back with the trombones, playing with them. Up front was Tex.
Tex Beneke, that was. But soon after joining Miller, Jerry Jerome observed the deviousness with which leaders could present their bands to the public.
So Glenn says, well, it may interest you. He said, no, the next week we're going to record. The week after I joined the band, record. Wow. And sure enough, we go into a studio, and I'm playing with Manny Klein and all these guys whose names I have heard of, Dick McDonough, guitar, and the guy the piano player with Tommy Dorsey was Smith. Howard Smith was playing piano. Oh, what am I doing here, Until we got up to Raymore. We got up there, we had rehearsal. There wasn't one guy that was on the record date. So I said, what happened to Manny Klein and Charlie Spivak? And what was it? Oh, he says, they're buddies of mine. He says, I want to make sure the records are going to be good.
The Glenn Miller Orchestra of 1937 with I'm Sitting on Top of the World, a recording made with lots of top studio players in the lineup who were never actually in the working band itself.
Glenn was like a scoutmaster. Shoes had to be shine and fresh pants have to be just right, And he believed in presentation. Everything was a presentation. There was not enough to play either. Everything that Glenn did was part of the arrangement. It wasn't a thing where, like Woody or Benny or Tommy would let a guy stand up and start playing, and all of a sudden he's cooking. Yeah, man, go. Crowd out there is reacting. Glenn give you the 16 bars, give you 32 bars, and that was part of the arrangement. And he insisted that when you go out on tour, that you play what you played on a record. That wasn't what a jazz player wants to do.
Which was the sort of consideration that kept some good musicians on the move from band to band. Jerome himself played primarily with Miller, Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman and Red Norvo. It was rare, but not unknown, for a band leader to be so thoroughly admired by his sidemen that he served as an example to them all. But that was the case with the black band leader Jimmy Lunsford, according to his sometime trumpeter and arranger Gerald Wilson.
He was a very smart man. And he was a wonderful man. He was a guy, a very upright man, a big man. He was a football player too, you know, an athlete, very clean living man. And we respected him. Our respect for him was the highest respect you could give a guy.
Now first take a bottle, an old empty bottle. Then you find a level place, one floor to place that bottle. Next you start to toddle, keep watch on the bottle. Then you step around a bit, be careful not to hit that bottle. Whoa, just like a clown, start messing around. Keep going through town, then you make a break and you wiggle like a snake that's hitting that bottle. It's easy to do, 'cause everybody hits the bottle. Everybody except Jimmy hits the bottle.
Everybody except Jimmy hits the bottle. There were not too many teetotal leaders, but Lunsford was one. Bunny Berrigan was the famous example of the opposite tendency, a fairly catastrophic drinker, but beloved by his musicians just the same. Joe Lipman was his pianist and arranger.
I can't say enough about Bunny, you know. The guys in the band loved him more than anybody. He was Mr. Wonderful. He was just a great guy. Not only did he play good, you know, he treated everybody in the band beautifully, you know. He's just a great conductor, you know. Some of the conductors used to get a little snotty, you know. I don't have to mention the names, but it was normal. You know, some of the guys were uppity, and some of them weren't paying attention all the time, looking at the gals.